The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Pemberton mansion as 8-year-old Emma pressed her small face against the cold banister, watching the adults below. Her father figure, Marcus Pemberton, stood in his tailored navy suit, laughing at something his new girlfriend Vivian had whispered in his ear. Emma's stomach twisted with a familiar unease that had been growing stronger each day since Vivian moved into their home 3 months ago. Marcus had taken Emma in when she was just 5 years old, after her parents died in a car accident. He wasn't related to her by blood, but he had been her father's best friend and business partner. When the social workers came to discuss Emma's future, Marcus didn't hesitate. He opened his home and his heart to the traumatized little girl, becoming the only father she had ever really known. Emma remembered those early days when it was just the two of them. Marcus would read her bedtime stories, help with her homework, and take her on weekend adventures to the zoo or the park. He taught her to ride a bike in the mansion's sprawling gardens and patiently answered her endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to how airplanes stayed in the air. Those were the happiest days of Emma's young life. But everything changed when Vivian Blackwood entered their lives. She was beautiful in a sharp, calculating way, with platinum blonde hair that never seemed out of place and green eyes that reminded Emma of a cat stalking its prey. Vivian was 28, nearly 15 years younger than Marcus, and she had swept into his world like a perfectly orchestrated storm. At first, Marcus had been cautious about introducing a romantic relationship into their small family. He dated occasionally over the years, but he'd always been careful to keep those relationships separate from his life with Emma. Vivian was different, though. She was charming and sophisticated, and she seemed to understand exactly what Marcus needed to hear. Emma watched from her perch on the stairs as Vivian glided across the living room, her red silk dress flowing like liquid fire. She was preparing drinks at the marble bar cart, her movements precise and deliberate. Marcus was reviewing some papers at his desk, completely absorbed in his work. This had become their evening routine over the past few weeks, and Emma had noticed a disturbing pattern. Every night, Vivian would prepare Marcus's favorite whiskey, a 30-year-old Macallan that he kept in a special decanter. She would bring it to him with a sweet smile and a gentle touch on his shoulder. Marcus would drink it slowly while they talked about their days, and then he would begin to look tired. Not just regular tired, but deeply exhausted, as if something was draining the life from him. Emma had tried to tell Marcus about her concerns, but he'd dismissed them as jealousy. "Sweetheart," he'd said, kneeling down to her level, "I know this is hard for you. Change is always difficult, especially when you're used to it being just the two of us. But Vivian makes me happy, and I hope you can learn to be happy for me too." But Emma knew this wasn't about jealousy. She'd seen the way Vivian looked at Marcus when she thought no one was watching. It wasn't love in those green eyes, it was something else entirely. Something that made Emma's skin crawl and her heart race with fear. Tonight felt different, though. There was an electricity in the air, a tension that made Emma's teeth ache. She'd been hiding on the stairs for 20 minutes, watching Vivian's careful preparations. The woman had taken longer than usual with the drink, and Emma had seen her reach into her purse when Marcus wasn't looking. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she watched Vivian pull out a small vial filled with white powder. The little girl's eyes widened in horror as Vivian glanced around nervously before quickly dumping the contents into Marcus's whiskey. She stirred it with a silver spoon, the powder dissolving completely, leaving no trace of its presence. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized what she'd just witnessed. She'd seen enough crime shows on television to know that people sometimes put bad things in other people's drinks. The thought that someone would do this to Marcus, to her beloved father figure, filled her with a rage and terror she'd never experienced before. Vivian was walking toward Marcus now, the poisoned drink in her manicured hands. Emma knew she had to act fast. She scrambled down the stairs, her bare feet slapping against the marble, making enough noise to alert both adults to her presence. "Marcus," Emma called out, her voice high and shaky with fear. "Don't drink that." Marcus looked up from his papers, surprised to see Emma out of bed. It was past 9 o'clock, well beyond her bedtime. "Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing up? You should be sleeping." Vivian's smile was sharp as a blade as she approached Marcus with the drink. "She's probably just having trouble adjusting to the new routine," she said smoothly. "Children often act out when they feel their security is threatened." Emma felt tears burning her eyes as she ran toward Marcus, desperation making her voice crack. "She put something in your drink. I saw her. She had a little bottle and she poured white powder into your whiskey." Marcus's expression shifted from surprise to concern, but not the kind of concern Emma had hoped for. He looked at her with the patient, slightly exasperated expression he wore when he thought she was being dramatic. Emma, that's a very serious accusation. You can't just say things like that about people. Vivian's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, Marcus, she's clearly upset about something. Maybe she had a nightmare? You know how children can be when they're overtired. But Emma could see something flickering in Vivian's eyes, something that looked like panic barely held in check. The woman's grip on the crystal tumbler had tightened, and there was a slight tremor in her hands that hadn't been there moments before. I'm not lying, Emma insisted, her voice rising to a near shout. I saw her. She looked in her purse and took out a little bottle with white stuff in it, and she put it in your drink when you weren't looking. Marcus set down his papers and stood up, his 6-foot frame towering over both Emma and Vivian. He was a handsome man in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and kind brown eyes that had always made Emma feel safe. But right now, those eyes were filled with disappointment, and that hurt worse than any physical pain Emma had ever experienced. Emma, I need you to apologize to Vivian right now, Marcus said firmly. These kinds of accusations are not only hurtful, they're dangerous. You could get someone in serious trouble by saying things like this. Emma felt her world crumbling around her. The one person who had always believed her, always protected her, was choosing to believe a stranger over her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked back and forth between Marcus and Vivian, seeing the satisfied smirk that Vivian was trying to hide behind a mask of hurt innocence. I won't apologize because I'm telling the truth, Emma said, her voice breaking. She's trying to hurt you, Marcus. Please don't drink that. Vivian stepped closer to Marcus, her free hand coming to rest on his arm in a gesture that looked supportive but struck Emma as possessive. Marcus, I think we need to have a serious conversation about Emma's behavior. This kind of acting out is concerning, and it's clearly escalating. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Emma understood what Vivian was suggesting, even if she couldn't articulate it fully. The woman was trying to convince Marcus that Emma was becoming a problem, that she might need to be sent away. Marcus looked torn, his gaze moving between the two most important females in his life. Emma could see the conflict in his expression, the way he was weighing his love for her against his feelings for Vivian. The fact that he was even considering Vivian's side made Emma's chest tight with panic. I know you don't believe me, Emma said, wiping her nose on her pajama sleeve. But what if I'm right? What if there really is something bad in that drink? What would happen if you drank it? Marcus sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. Emma, sweetheart, I understand that you're scared. Change is frightening, and I know having Vivian here has been an adjustment for you. But you can't go around making accusations like this. It's not fair to Vivian, and it's not healthy for you. Vivian's smile was triumphant as she lifted the glass toward Marcus. Here, darling. You've had such a long day, and you look exhausted. This will help you relax. Emma felt desperation clawing at her throat as she watched Marcus reach for the glass. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. If Marcus wouldn't listen to her words, maybe he would listen to her actions. If you won't believe me, then prove I'm wrong, Emma shouted, lunging forward and grabbing the glass from Vivian's hand before anyone could stop her. The crystal tumbler was heavier than Emma had expected, and her small hands struggled to maintain their grip. Whiskey sloshed over the rim, staining her pink pajamas and filling the air with the sharp scent of alcohol. Emma, no, Marcus exclaimed, reaching for the glass. You're too young to drink that. But Emma was already lifting the tumbler to her lips, her hands shaking so badly that more whiskey spilled down her chin. She managed to take a small sip before Marcus grabbed the glass away from her, the liquid burning her throat and making her cough violently. What have you done? Vivian shrieked, her composure finally cracking. She could get alcohol poisoning. A child that size could die from drinking that much whiskey. Marcus was already on his knees beside Emma, his hands on her shoulders as she continued to cough and sputter. Emma, why would you do something so dangerous? You know you're not supposed to drink alcohol. Through her coughing fit, Emma managed to gasp out, because if there's something bad in it, you'll know I was telling the truth. And if there isn't, then I'll be the one who gets sick instead of you. The room fell silent except for Emma's labored breathing. Marcus stared at his adopted daughter with a mixture of horror and dawning realization. The logic of an 8-year-old mind was often flawed, but the love behind Emma's actions was unmistakable. She had been willing to risk her own safety to protect him. Vivian's face had gone pale, and she was backing toward the door with the jerky movements of someone fighting panic. Marcus, we need to call poison control right now. If she's consumed that much alcohol, she could go into a coma. But Marcus was studying Emma carefully, his medical knowledge from his pre-business days kicking in. She was coughing and her eyes were watering from the burn of the whiskey, but she didn't seem to be exhibiting any signs of serious distress. She'd only managed to swallow a small amount before he'd taken the glass away. "Emma, how do you feel?" Marcus asked gently, his voice tight with concern. "Do you feel dizzy? Nauseous? Does your stomach hurt?" Emma wiped her eyes and looked up at him with a shaky smile. "I'm okay. The whiskey tastes really bad and it burns, but I don't feel sick. Not like when I had the flu last winter." Marcus frowned, his analytical mind beginning to work through the situation. If Emma had consumed enough alcohol to cause serious harm, she should be showing symptoms by now. The fact that she seemed relatively unaffected suggested that she'd only ingested a small amount, which was consistent with what he'd observed. But there was something else nagging at him, something about Vivian's reaction that didn't quite fit. She'd gone from confident and in control to panicked and desperate in a matter of seconds. If Emma had simply taken a sip of whiskey, why was Vivian so concerned about poison control? "Vivian," Marcus said slowly, his eyes never leaving Emma's face, "you seem very worried about the alcohol." But Emma only had a small sip. Most children her age would be fine after consuming that amount, especially if we monitor her closely. Vivian's laugh was high and brittle. "I'm just concerned about her safety, Marcus. You can never be too careful with children and alcohol. The effects can be unpredictable." Emma was watching this exchange with growing hope. She could see that Marcus was beginning to question Vivian's story, beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, his 8-year-old daughter had been telling the truth all along. "Marcus," Emma said quietly, tugging on his sleeve, "I really did see her put something in your drink. I know you don't want to believe it, but I wouldn't lie about something this important. I love you too much to lie about someone trying to hurt you." Marcus looked down at Emma's earnest face, seeing the absolute conviction in her eyes. This wasn't the expression of a child making up stories for attention. This was the face of someone who had witnessed something terrible and was desperate to protect the person she loved most in the world. Slowly, Marcus stood up and walked over to where he'd set the glass down on his desk. He picked it up and held it up to the light, swirling the amber liquid gently. At first glance, it looked like perfectly normal whiskey, but as he continued to examine it, he noticed something odd. There was a faint residue at the bottom of the glass, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. It was white and powdery, exactly as Emma had described. Marcus felt his blood run cold as the implications hit him. "Vivian," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "would you mind explaining what this residue is in my drink?" Vivian's face went from pale to ashen. "I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing in that glass except whiskey." Marcus held the glass up so she could see it clearly. "There's definitely something else in here. Something white and powdery, just like Emma described." Emma felt a surge of vindication mixed with terror. She'd been right, but being right meant that someone had actually tried to poison Marcus. The reality of how close she'd come to losing him made her knees weak. "Maybe it's just condensation?" Vivian suggested weakly. "Or maybe the glass wasn't completely clean?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Vivian, I'm going to ask you one more time. What did you put in my drink?" The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Emma could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as she watched the two adults face off. Vivian's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and underneath it, Emma could see something ugly and desperate. "Fine," Vivian said finally, her voice flat and cold. "You want to know what I put in your drink? It was just a sleeping pill. Nothing dangerous, just something to help you relax." Marcus's face went white with rage. "A sleeping pill? Without my knowledge or consent? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? What if I'd had an allergic reaction? What if I'd mixed it with other medications?" Emma felt sick to her stomach as she realized how close Marcus had come to serious harm. If she hadn't been watching, if she hadn't spoken up, if she hadn't been willing to risk her own safety to prove her point, Marcus might have consumed whatever Vivian had given him. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," Vivian said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I just wanted you to sleep deeply so we could talk in the morning about Emma's future." The pieces were falling into place now, and Marcus could see the full scope of Vivian's plan. She'd been drugging him, making him tired and compliant, all while positioning herself as the reasonable adult who could help him deal with his difficult, adopted daughter. "You've been doing this before, haven't you?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking with anger. "That's why I've been so tired lately. That's why I've been having trouble concentrating at work." Vivian's silence was answer enough. Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief now rather than fear. Marcus believed her. He could see the truth of what Vivian had been doing, and he was angry about it. She wasn't going to lose him after all. Marcus pulled out his phone and began dialing. I'm calling the police, he said grimly. What you've done is assault, Vivian. You could have killed me. Wait, Vivian said, desperation creeping into her voice. Marcus, please. Let's talk about this rationally. I made a mistake, but it wasn't malicious. I was just trying to help you get the rest you needed. But Marcus was already speaking to the emergency dispatcher, his voice calm and professional despite the fury Emma could see burning in his eyes. Yes, I need to report a poisoning. Someone put drugs in my drink without my consent. While Marcus was on the phone, Emma found herself alone with Vivian for a moment. The woman's mask had completely fallen away now, and the look she gave Emma was filled with pure hatred. You little brat, Vivian hissed under her breath. You've ruined everything. He would have been mine if you hadn't interfered. Emma lifted her chin defiantly, feeling braver now that Marcus knew the truth. He was never going to be yours, she said quietly. Because you don't really love him. If you loved him, you wouldn't try to hurt him. Vivian's laugh was bitter. Love? You think this is about love? This is about money, you naive little girl. Marcus is worth millions, and I was going to make sure I got my share. The casual admission of her mercenary motives hit Emma like a physical blow. She'd known that Vivian didn't truly care about Marcus, but hearing it stated so baldly was still shocking. Marcus finished his phone call and turned back to them, his face grim. The police are on their way, and I'm going to the hospital to get tested. Emma, you're coming with me to make sure you're okay too. I feel fine, Emma said, though she was grateful for Marcus's concern. The whiskey was gross, but I don't feel sick. Marcus knelt down and pulled Emma into a tight hug, his arms wrapping around her small frame like a protective shield. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you, he whispered into her hair. You were trying to protect me, and I almost let something terrible happen because I was too stubborn to listen. Emma hugged him back fiercely, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. It's okay, she said. You believe me now, and that's what matters. No, it's not okay, Marcus said firmly, pulling back to look at her. You're the most important person in my life, Emma. I should have trusted you. I should have listened when you told me something was wrong. The sound of sirens in the distance made Vivian flinch. She was pacing now, her hands shaking as she realized the full consequences of her actions were about to come crashing down on her. Marcus, please, she tried one more time. Can't we work this out between us? I'll leave, I'll disappear, and you'll never see me again. There's no need to involve the police. Marcus's expression was granite hard. You drugged me, Vivian. You put my life at risk, and you tried to manipulate me into getting rid of Emma. There's no working this out. The police arrived within minutes, followed closely by paramedics. Emma watched with fascination as the adults took control of the situation, asking questions, taking statements, and carefully bagging the evidence. The glass with its telltale residue was placed in a plastic bag, along with Vivian's purse, which contained 2 more vials of the white powder. It's Rohypnol, one of the officers explained to Marcus after testing the substance. Also known as roofies. It's a powerful sedative that can cause memory loss, confusion, and in large doses, respiratory depression or even death. Emma felt her stomach drop as she realized how much danger Marcus had been in. She'd heard about roofies on the news, usually in the context of people using them to hurt others. The thought that Vivian had been giving this to Marcus night after night made her feel sick. Marcus's face had gone pale. How long would she have been giving this to me? The officer looked at his notes. Based on the amount we found in her possession and your description of your symptoms, probably several weeks. You're lucky your daughter caught her when she did. The dose she prepared tonight was significantly larger than what she'd been giving you before. Emma shuddered at the implication. If she hadn't been watching, if she hadn't spoken up, Marcus might not have survived the night. The paramedics insisted on taking both Marcus and Emma to the hospital for testing and observation. Emma found herself in the back of an ambulance for the first time in her life, holding Marcus's hand as they raced through the night toward the emergency room. Are you scared? Marcus asked, squeezing her hand gently. Emma considered the question seriously. A little, she admitted. But mostly I'm just glad you're okay. I was so scared that something bad was going to happen to you. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. You saved my life tonight, Emma. Do you understand that? If you hadn't been brave enough to speak up, if you hadn't been willing to risk your own safety to prove your point, I might not be here right now. Emma felt a warm glow of pride mixed with relief. She'd done the right thing, even when it was hard, even when no one believed her. She'd protected the person she loved most in the world, and that was worth everything. At the hospital, the doctors ran a series of tests on both of them. Emma's blood work came back clean except for a small amount of alcohol, which the doctors said would be out of her system within a few hours. Marcus's tests were more concerning, showing traces of rohypnol in his bloodstream, confirming that he'd been drugged multiple times over the past several weeks. "You're going to feel much better over the next few days as this clears your system," the doctor explained. "Rohypnol can cause fatigue, confusion, and memory problems. The fact that you've been functioning as well as you have while being drugged is actually quite remarkable." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "I thought I was just stressed from work. I never imagined that someone was actually poisoning me." Emma curled up in the hospital bed next to Marcus, finally allowing herself to relax now that she knew he was going to be okay. The events of the night felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than her real life. "Marcus," Emma said quietly as they waited for the final test results. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to send me away now? I know Vivian wanted you to, and I know I caused a lot of trouble tonight." Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are my daughter in every way that matters. You saved my life tonight, and even if you hadn't, I would never, ever send you away. You're stuck with me, kiddo, whether you like it or not." Emma felt tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "I like it," she whispered. "I like it a lot." The police came to the hospital to take their final statements. Emma found herself telling the story over and over again, each time feeling more confident in her version of events. The officers were kind and patient with her, treating her like a credible witness rather than just a scared child. "You did exactly the right thing," one of the officers told her. "It takes a lot of courage to speak up when you see something wrong, especially when adults don't believe you at first. You should be very proud of yourself." Emma beamed at the praise, feeling a sense of accomplishment that she'd never experienced before. She'd faced a real crisis and handled it with bravery and determination. She protected her family and helped bring a dangerous person to justice. As they were preparing to leave the hospital, Marcus received a call from his lawyer. Vivian had been arrested and charged with multiple counts of assault and attempted murder. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was likely to face serious jail time. "What about her plan to get your money?" Emma asked as they walked to Marcus's car. Marcus smiled grimly. "Well, that's definitely not going to happen now. And I'm going to make sure my will is very clear about what happens to my assets if something happens to me. You're my heir, Emma. Everything I have will be yours someday." Emma felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Marcus was saying. She'd never really thought about money or inheritance before, but she understood that Marcus was telling her she was truly his family now, in every legal and practical sense. The drive home was quiet, both of them processing the events of the evening. Emma found herself looking at their house with new eyes as they pulled into the driveway. This was her home, her safe place, and she'd fought to protect it and the man who'd made it possible. Inside, the house felt different somehow. The living room where the confrontation had taken place looked ordinary now, but Emma knew she'd never forget what had happened there. The marble bar cart where Vivian had prepared the poison drink stood empty, and Marcus immediately went over and poured all the remaining alcohol down the sink. "I think I'm done drinking for a while," he said with a shaky laugh. "Maybe forever." Emma nodded approvingly. "That's probably a good idea. At least until you're sure no one is trying to put bad stuff in your drinks." They spent the next hour talking about what would happen next. There would be a trial, and Emma would probably have to testify about what she'd seen. The thought was scary, but Marcus assured her that he'd be there to support her every step of the way. "What if people don't believe me?" Emma asked, voicing her biggest fear. Marcus knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Emma, you have physical evidence to back up your story. You have the residue in the glass, the drugs they found in Vivian's purse, and the test results showing that I was drugged. But even if you didn't have all of that, I would believe you. I will always believe you from now on." Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. The fear that Marcus might choose someone else over her, that she might lose the only real family she'd ever known, was finally gone. As they headed upstairs to bed, Emma paused at the top of the stairs where she'd been hiding earlier that evening. It felt like a lifetime ago, but it had only been a few hours since she'd watched Vivian poison Marcus's drink. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said, following her gaze. "What you did tonight took incredible courage. You saw something wrong, and you didn't let anyone convince you to ignore it. That's the kind of person I hope you'll always be." Emma smiled up at him. "I learned it from you. You always taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." Marcus's eyes filled with tears again. "I love you, Emma, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you too, Marcus. You're the best dad in the whole world." They hugged tightly at the top of the stairs, both of them understanding that their relationship had been tested and had emerged stronger than ever. Emma had proven that she would fight for their family, and Marcus had learned to trust in the wisdom and intuition of the little girl who meant everything to him. As Emma settled into her bed that night, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. The threat to their family was gone, and Marcus was safe. More importantly, she knew without a doubt that she belonged here, that this was her home and Marcus was her family, no matter what challenges they might face in the future. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as news of Vivian's arrest spread. Marcus's business associates called to express their concern and support, and several of Emma's teachers reached out to offer help and counseling services. The local news picked up the story, portraying Emma as a young hero who'd saved her father's life. Emma found the attention overwhelming at first, but Marcus helped her navigate the interviews and questions with grace and confidence. She told her story simply and honestly, emphasizing the importance of speaking up when you see something wrong, even if adults don't believe you at first. "Children see things that adults sometimes miss," Emma told one reporter. "We notice when people are acting different or when something doesn't feel right. Adults should listen to us more, because we might be seeing something important." The story resonated with people across the country, and Emma began receiving letters from other children who'd been in similar situations. Some had been believed and helped, while others had been dismissed just as Emma initially was. Marcus helped her respond to each letter, and they began working with local child advocacy groups to promote the importance of listening to children's concerns. The trial took place 6 months later, and Emma testified with confidence and clarity about what she'd witnessed that night. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Vivian guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, ensuring that she wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. After the trial, Emma and Marcus settled into a new routine that felt both familiar and different from their life before Vivian. They were closer now, their bond strengthened by the crisis they'd weathered together. Marcus was more attentive to Emma's concerns and observations, and Emma felt more confident in her ability to protect the people she loved. They established new traditions and rituals that were uniquely theirs. Sunday morning pancakes became a sacred ritual, where they would talk about their week and plan for the days ahead. Emma learned to cook some of Marcus's favorite meals, and he helped her with increasingly complex school projects and homework. Marcus also made sure Emma understood the importance of what she'd done and the skills she'd demonstrated. He enrolled her in a self-defense class and a public speaking program, wanting to nurture the courage and confidence she'd shown during the crisis. "You have good instincts," he told her one evening as they worked on a science project together. "You're observant, you're brave, and you're willing to stand up for what's right. Those are incredibly valuable qualities, and I want to make sure you continue to develop them." Emma beamed at the praise. "Do you think I could be a detective when I grow up? Or maybe a police officer?" Marcus smiled. "You could be anything you want to be, Emma. You've already proven that you have what it takes to solve problems and protect people. Whatever career you choose, you'll be amazing at it." As Emma grew older, the events of that night became a defining moment in her understanding of herself and her place in the world. She learned that sometimes doing the right thing meant standing alone, that protecting the people you love might require personal sacrifice, and that children's voices and observations were valuable and important. The experience also deepened her relationship with Marcus in ways that went beyond the typical parent-child bond. They'd been through a crisis together, and they'd emerged as true partners in building their family. Emma knew that Marcus would always have her back, and Marcus knew that Emma would always fight for their family's safety and well-being. Years later, when Emma was in college studying criminal justice, she would often think back to that night when she was 8 years old and had to convince the most important person in her life that she was telling the truth about a dangerous situation. The memory served as a reminder of her own strength and the importance of trusting her instincts, even when others doubted her. The story of Emma and Marcus became a cautionary tale about the importance of listening to children and a testament to the power of love and courage in the face of danger. Their bond, forged in crisis and strengthened by trust, became the foundation for a family that would weather any storm together. In the end, Emma's warning had saved more than just Marcus's life. It had saved their family, their future, and their faith in each other. The 8-year-old girl who'd been brave enough to speak up when she saw something wrong had grown into a confident young woman who would never hesitate to protect the people she loved, no matter the cost.